Okay, so our friends out at Anchor Lube sent some Christmas presents. Everybody that walks in through the door is going to get a bottle of Anchor Lube. So thanks to the guys at Anchor Lube. By the way, this is always available at the Bar Z website if you need some. Friends at Fireball Tools sent out some undisclosed prizes. Very nice. There's 4 Touch DRO modules in there that are going out to some lucky winners. And there's some swag from Lincoln Electric, welding gloves and welding paraphernalia. Okay, so that's Christmas gifts this year. And we were talking about doing a live feed during Christmas. Maybe we'll get into that a little bit. Okay. Let's get to the subject of today's show. Vevor sent in a glass scale for me to play with, and we're going to hook it up to the one of the Touch DRO modules and get it fired up. Let's get into that and see how that's going. Hey guys, welcome to Bar Z. My name's Stan, and today we're going to review something else from Vevor. They liked my last review, and they sent me something else out that I actually picked out. And this is a glass linear scale. This is the type TTL. There's a difference. I'm going to show you the difference between the different types of scales. They're not all wired the same. You need to be careful when you hook up if you buy a replacement scale before you hook it up to your DRO, you have to do some investigating. And but it's pretty much the typical scale. It was very nicely packaged, high density foam. The scale was suspended. They're fragile. You know they're fragile, and they need to be boxed really well. And it comes with the usual complements. You know, it comes with a guard and bracketry to mount your reed head. You know, aluminum brackets. It's pretty much the typical of what you've seen. Hold down kits, guard end caps. This one has a unique adapter that makes it a little more universal. And it actually has something that's very valuable, which is a wiring diagram with the outputs. And I'm going to show you that too. We're going to get you in a little closer. But what we're doing, we're getting this ready for the Bar Z Christmas party this year. So we got the scale, but there's some other stuff involved. And I'm going to bring you in a little closer and show you some of that. But right now I've got it all hooked up. I'm going to go through what I had to do to hook it up and, you know, do the configurations and everything. These scales have a double, right now I've still got the plastic spacer in there that keeps the reed head spaced away, but it's got double silicone seals. There's one outer wiper seal and one inner wiper seal. Ideally, you want to mount this upside down so no debris can get in there. But if you do have to mount it vertically, try to keep it away from the chips, and you know, use your guarding to keep any slinging chips away from the seals. Now these are not coolant proof. If you get coolant in there, you're probably going to have some problems. So make sure you shield them and keep them out of the way as far as you can for any oils, coolant, miscoolant, flood coolant, anything like that. All right. Let's get you zoomed in. We're going to talk about the different types of hookups for these things, and then we're going to talk about what we're going to plug this thing into. Also, there's this is a 300 millimeter scale, and you got your choice of what length of scale you want to get. Now, cutting these, I'm not going to say it's not out of the question. You could do it, but you got to be really careful. And I recommend you go watch Robin Renzetti's channel and look back on his older videos on how he cut a glass scale. Not easy to do, but it is doable. All right, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure. All righty, let's. And once again, thanks to Vevor for sending this out. I'm going to drop a link below to Vevor, and you've got your choice of a lot of different lengths, so you can get them pretty close to what you need. Make sure that you take into account that the reed head's got quite a bit of, takes up quite a bit of real estate there. So make sure you get your scale long enough so you've got room to traverse down the full length of the scale. All right. Let's go talk about the wiring a little bit. Okay, first of all, there's two types of outputs. Right as the scale sits, it comes in with a TTL, which you see over on the left, and that's your sine wave or your signal off of the read head. Now the other way is called a 422 type. And these are the two different types of inputs. As you can see, both of them have overlapping square waveforms. But one is, I think it double checks itself. It's like a sine and a cosine. So, and what they send you is this little adapter, and this will convert you over to the 422. So no matter what your, what your unit needs, your actual DRO, what it needs, you can adapt it. But you still need to be very careful and make sure you're getting the right pinouts. If you reverse polarity to a read head, you're going to smoke it. All right. But it also gives you the pinouts. There's a representation of the pinouts there. And then on the top chart, it's going to give you the 422 outputs. And on the bottom chart, it's going to give you the TTL outputs, which is much more simplistic. All right, but it's got the two there. And like I say, that little adapter will adapt you over to the 422 signal output. And no matter what brand you buy, whether it's the Vevor unit or maybe you've got one already, you need to be very careful what you do. Now it's time to talk about what we're going to hook this up to. And let's start off on a website. Okay, I've got you zoomed in to a website for the module that we're going to be hooking up to this unit. I'm hoping the glare is okay. Yeah, you're pretty good there. We're going to be hooking this up to a touch DRO. And let's talk about identifying your pinouts. Right here, this is right off their website, Finding Glass Scale Pinouts. And here you're going to find a big tutorial on how to open up the read head, take a good look in there, see which unit you have and how to identify it between the two different ones. There's two different major types. The pinout functions it talks about. Some tools, how to open up the plug and identify all the wires. And there's three different types of read heads there, and you can actually blow this up and take a good look at those so you can identify which one you have, which is nice. And the main thing is finding the power supply. After you found out, you get your 0 reference and your 5 volt DC reference, and then you can power up the scale just with 2 wires. You power up the scale right off the board, and then you identify your pulse lines. And it gives you everything you need to do that. All you need is a voltmeter and your scale and your touch DRO. All right. But we're going to show you that touch DRO and how it works and set up the. We're gonna hook this up to a tablet, so we're gonna take a good look at the tablet, how we're gonna do that. But it's not plug and play. Depending on which scales you buy, you're going to need to assemble some jumpers, and you need to be very careful when you do it. All right, so let's get in a little farther on it. Okay, I've got you zoomed in pretty good on the board on the touch DRO. As you can see, I'm powered up by the green light, and then the blue flasher is a Bluetooth link. And we're hooking up 3 axes here, but there's 4 available. And these are the jumpers right here. These plugs to these pinouts are you need to be configured based on your the type of scale and how it's wired. Now what they come with, I'm going to show you one of the jumpers. And here's a word of caution. These jumpers look, the naked eye, they look the same, but it's got a gold end and it's got a silver or bright end. The bright ends are kind of a square, pin. It's pin and sleeve is what it is. But the silver ones go in these square plugs here, and then the gold ones, this end, are actually round, and those go to your connectors out here. They go out to your scales. So it comes with a bunch of these little jumpers. So make sure you put them in correctly, and you need to read the instructions. I mean, you can damage them instantly, and you know you only get one chance to get those plugs down in there. After they snap in, there's no really good way of unsnapping them. You can, if you've got good magnification, you can undo the latch release and get them out, but it's no fun. But I've got all three of these configured the same. These are all going to be on the same glass scale. Right now I've only got one scale. Vevor only sent me one scale, so I can't hook up the other two. And then we've also got capability of adding a fourth. But there's some other things I want you to take a look at here. First of all, there's some soldering connections that say probe, tack, limit X, limit Y, limit Z, and limit W. Now your inputs are X, Y, Z, and W. Now you can have, the probe is for a touch probe, which they are going to be supporting in the future. The tack is for a tachometer, and that is currently supported. And then the limit X, Y, Z, and W are for in-stop limit switches that are going to be configurable, which is pretty neat. All you do is drop your wires in, solder them in, and away you go. So I'm actually looking forward to the tachometer. I think if we put a rotary encoder on a spindle or something, we can get tachometer readings right off of our DRO, which is nice. We can get, not only can we get X, Y, and Z positioning, we can also get RPM that reads out on our display. Okay, I just wanted to show you around this thing. This is a 3D printed case. I've got it open right now, obviously, but I'll close it up. It assembled very easily. All the information you need is on the Touch DRO website. But the hardest part, and it took me a while, and it was mostly research, between the paperwork that came with the scales and reading on the Touch DRO website on how to configure these jumpers to get the scales to work. Okay? But, you know, now that I've got it figured out, the software end of it, where you load the app into the tablet, was pretty easy. You know, it takes less than 5 minutes. I know it supports Android. I am not sure if they can do Apple. I would probably have to read a little more on the website to see if they do support Apple. But I wanted to show you around the board, the up and coming provisions, and our configuration that we had to do. Okay, so I've done a rough calibration. I've just laid a 12-inch scale there right next to the reed head, so I was able to reference the edge of the reed head over 12 inches. So it's not, I'm not using gauge blocks or anything. You can't do any of that to get it on the machine and get a clean axis moving. But it's enough to get some values and see what's going on with it. Now the calibration procedure is spelled out on the website for Touch DRO. So you're able to calibrate your Vevor glass scales with the unit and get it to read correctly. I'm showing just one axis on the software, on the app, but you can enable as many axes as you want. It's pretty simple to do, and it's kind of a fun app to play with, and it's a very versatile app. And the beauty of this is that app's always going to be updated online, so you're always going to have the latest, greatest DRO. If he adds features or does an upgrade, you're going to get it. And this is free of charge. You don't have to pay for this app at all. This is support for the Touch DRO module. Okay, so you know, just if I was to move this thing 12 inches, there's my full scale there. Rough. I'm 36 thousandths off, but there's that's about 11 inches there. Okay, 9 inches, 7 inches, you know, and then back to zero. So pretty good. It's got a 0 set button here, and you get an audible out of your tablet. You'll always get some kind of beep to let you know you're pushing the buttons. It's got absolute and incremental, so you can switch back and forth between those. You've got inch and millimeter you can switch to, and then it's got a bunch of tool things that you're used to seeing, bolt hole circles and things like that. So it just turns your tablet into a DRO, and as long as you've got a nice big display on your tablet, you know, it's pretty good. You know, you can hang that on the wall next to your machine. You can, if you've got one of these modules on every single machine, you can use the same tablet and move from machine to machine. They've got input settings under configurations. So you would come here and you'd, right now it's just, it's set for default for a vertical mill. You can name it. If you had a lathe and a mill, you can name one lathe and one mill, and every time you move back and forth, it would change the configuration for you. On scale setups, you know, all your scale calibration and everything stays in your tablet. All right. Right now we're only displaying the X-axis. That's the only one I got hooked up. I have 4 ports available, but let's go into the menu and we'll see what can be displayed. Even though we can't get a reading, we're going to go see what can be displayed. And we're going to scroll up. I'm doing this kind of lefty here. Here's all our X-axis settings. Let's take a look at those real quick. X-axis enabled. You got your primary action button, your second action button, and your third action button. Those are the buttons that are next to the axes. Inputs, your resolution right here is where you set your steps per inch. This is how you calibrate the scales. All right. So let's go back and let's go to the Y-axis. Right now it's not being displayed, but let's display it. All right, we'll go back. Z-axis, we'll go ahead and set that to display. Go back. And then let's set up tachometer. Okay, tachometer label. Let's label that real quick. That just says RPM, but you know what? I want it to say maybe spindle or something. Okay, so now we named one special. Let's go see what the display looks like now. Okay, now we've got spindle down here, X, Y, and Z, and this, if you had an encoder, a rotary encoder hooked up to your spindle, you'd be reading out RPM right there. Now, once again, we are still on just our top display. We don't have anything plugged into Y or Z, but there's a 3-axis setup with a spindle. So pretty neat. And these are all the buttons I was telling you for your primary, secondary buttons, and then third buttons next to each display. So we could have one here. We could have this one reading in millimeter, and we could have this one reading in inch if we wanted to. I don't know what, I don't know, you know, it might be useful. You never know. You just never know. Or we can convert the whole thing over to millimeter. That switches all of them. Okay. And all these buttons are renameable, X, Y, and Z. So if it's easier for you to remember another name, try to keep your name short because you're going to have display problems within that button. I did discover that. So spindle just barely fits in there. If it was any longer, it would split it into 2 and it would look funny. So, all right. But that's the app. That's what you need to do to get everything hooked up. It's kind of a lot of trouble, but it's I actually had a good time doing it. Learn from what I'm telling you. Go to the website first thing. Go to TouchDRO. And get your data sheet for your scale. That's going to help you out tremendously. But I've been pretty impressed with this Vevor head so far. I'd like to get it on the machine and check it out. I'm going to set up a 2-axis for a surface grinder for this. You know, I'm going to have it on my down feed, on my tower, and on the Y-axis of the table. So looking forward to getting that done. Looking forward to getting the other scales from Vevor. Like I say, this is the only one that showed up, but I wanted to get this video shot. And now here's another little tidbit. These modules right here, We got 4 of those to give away at this year's. Everyone keeps calling it the Winter Bash. They keep teasing me. It's a Christmas party. Anyways, we got 4 of these to give away during the Christmas party. So some 4 lucky attendees to the Christmas party are going to walk away with a Touch DRO that they can hook up to their tablet and their scales. Okay, it takes a little bit of doing on their part, but I think it's completely worth it. It's a really nice display. All right, I'm pretty impressed with it, and you know, we are completely wireless. That thing, no wires on me, so no flies on this thing. All right, guys. Special thanks to the folks at Vevor for the glass scale. Special thanks to Touch DRO for their Bluetooth module, and he loaned me a display. But that's pretty darn cool. He even 3D printed me a little bracket in the back there to hang the turkey with. So pretty neat. Oh, and it flips, by the way. That whole display will flip either way. This is your workspace down here. If you've got X and Y enabled, you're going to show, there's a bolt hole pattern right there that I plugged in just for funsies, and that X there shows your spindle center. So if you start moving around, you can get over your target holes, and it'll beep and tell you where you're at on your workspace. Now, your workspace is available on this. So there's part of your workspace there. This is where you set up your grid pattern or whatever pattern you're doing down here. If you're doing a bolt hole pattern or an angular pattern or whatever, it'll show it up here in your workspace. Okay, and there's your workspace out there, and you can go back and get rid of this, and you're back to your full-size DRO. So pretty cool. All right, guys, the worst problem with this is touching the face of that with your greasy fingers, but that's the case for any DRO in the world. All right, enough rambling. Merry Christmas, everyone, and we'll see you on the next one.